Welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 191. What will you be gathering? With the wind starting to chill as it hurries through the amber hues of the autumnal trees and the darkness falling earlier here in the Northern Hemisphere, nature offers us a timely reminder. The year is waning, meaning it's time to gather, and in every sense of the word. Just a few days ago, I noticed a very noisy rustling in the twisted hazel in our garden. I went to have a look and saw that our grey squirrel is back, busily taking as many cobnuts as he could. I then watched as he buried some in our back lawns and then checked on others that he'd buried earlier. He's doing just as nature guides him, gathering sufficient to sustain him through the winter. So this got me thinking, what am I gathering now that will sustain me over the coming months? And what about you? Of course, it's obvious how gathering applies to crops, and we've already had the harvest moon and the autumn equinox, so we're in final harvest mode now. The farmers have been busy harvesting their grain and picking the apples from their orchards. Next comes the pumpkins and the squashes. That gathering of the crops, whilst primarily a physical act of harvesting what has been sown, also provides a metaphor for personal reflections and the collections of thoughts, achievements and learnings. We consider this to be the personal harvest, and our personal and professional lives yield harvests that deserve appreciation. So as with nature, at this time of year, it's a great idea to look at what we've achieved thus far and decide if there is something still to do that requires our attention so that we can focus on it during the last weeks of the year. We can still get a lot done in 2 months, and we need to bear in mind that introverts like you and me will be thinking of hunkering down soon. Every project completed, every skill acquired, and even every failure encountered represents seeds that have sprouted into valuable experiences. Acknowledging each achievement, regardless of its magnitude, contributes to a wholesome understanding of our year's journey and adds a layer to our personal and professional growth. I find that many of us have to choose to gather personally if we're going to value our achievements, our ideas, and definitely our learnings. When I start to reflect, I notice that many of my ideas have not yet been actioned. And as an aside, why do new ideas always pop into my head at about 3 a.m? As I mentioned in my last podcast episode, Elizabeth Gilbert in her book Big Magic says ideas are like entities searching for a willing partner to bring them to life. If one person doesn't act on it, the idea might move on to someone else. So I know that it's okay for some of the ideas on my to-do list to be erased, knowing that someone else might pick them up and might even do something with them that was much better than I was planning. Many introverts love this time of year as it aligns with our natural tendency to shut the world out and cozy down. We are not afraid to embrace solitude, especially when constant connection and interaction are both possible and expected by society. It's the perfect time to recharge at a deep level, in readiness for any big seasonal celebrations that we may be involved with. I know they may not be our favourite occasions, but we're introverts, not misanthropes, so we can get involved provided we've pre-charged sufficiently and then we prioritise our recharging. Planned well, we can find this time of year provides safe haven so that we can dive deeply into thoughts, emotions and desires without external interference. We often do need to ensure that this doesn't morph into overthinking, and there is a marked difference between overthinking and personal reflection in terms of their purpose, their duration, and their emotional impact. Overthinking has a negative impact, leading to stress, anxiety, and sometimes even paralysis in decision making. It can be cyclical, repetitive, and prolonged, meaning that we tend to dwell on issues, problems, or negative experiences without leading to a resolution or constructive outcomes. This makes it unproductive as we typically rehash old thoughts rather than finding new insights. Personal reflection, on the other hand, has a more positive impact, and it supports our emotional and intellectual growth. It's about purposefully gaining insight, which fosters problem solving and personal growth. It has a beginning and an end without becoming a persistent, unending loop of thought. So as we harvest, we create the space for self-dialogue and reflection in order to further our understanding. That means, in both the physical and the personal sense, gathering is about being able to provide for ourselves during the months ahead. In this way, we don't let our efforts go to waste. One of the things we'll need to do is to reflect on our support network to ensure that it's fit for purpose. Some introverts think they don't need support and that they can do everything themselves. While this may be true, I have to think about who is there for me when I have the 3 a.m. collywobbles, who brings me to my senses when I take on too much. I called on their support earlier this week. Maybe that's a story for another day. Who brings me supplies when I am sick and unable to leave the house? Who takes the cats to the vets if I'm unavailable? Who can talk sensibly about my investments and business decisions? Who comes shopping with me for that special outfit? Who can I share my health concerns with who won't go all hypochondriac on me? And what am I still prepared to do for those people? A support network is a reciprocal entity, so it's give and take on all sides. So, this is a great time to call in your support network to refresh those informal but powerful contracts and reaffirm your support for each other. We know that we don't need a huge number of people for this, but we do need support in essential areas. And the good news is that you get to decide what those essential areas are. And life is busy, so what they committed to last time might not be a possibility now. Once we have the courage to ask for help and offer it, our support network becomes invaluable. As John Donne says, none of us is an island, and that applies even to we introverts. And just so I'm clear, this is not the same as being nosy or getting up in someone's business. It's a support network, a group of people who can be compassionately honest with each other. We are often so busy doing, we forget that we're human beings. We don't allow ourselves sufficient time to reflect on our achievements, our progress, and what is still left to do. So the other thing I gather at this time of the year is feedback, to see if my work is making the impact I intend. You'll know that I'm aiming to leave a legacy in people rather than for people, and I guess there will be some of both. The impact I'm leaving in people includes raised awareness of the extroversion bias and the harm it can do, increased confidence that identifying as an introvert is nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, we have skills and a demeanour that the world needs. A knowledge of how to create an inclusive workplace for introverts, the ability to play to our natural strengths, a greater understanding of the importance of valuing difference. I think if I make some headway in those, I'll be doing well. And of course, I won't truly know unless I take the time to gather feedback and opinion. The data I get will help me to determine my next plans, which need thinking about already. Winter isn't completely devoid of produce, but we have to plan ahead for it. Once I have the data, I'll be shaping my intentions and refining my approach for the upcoming year. I'll plan what seeds to plant, physical and metaphorical, and when in order to maximise my harvest next year. And my planting ideas have to align with my business brand, my personal brand, and my legacy intentions. That way, the planning and action taking is informed and intentional. So whether it be the physical bounty of the harvest, the emotional yield of the reflections, or the social crop of your support network, every aspect deserves acknowledgement, celebration, and gratitude. Now, I have a few final questions. How do you engage in the act of gathering? What are you ready to harvest? What bounties will you discover in the process? How will you be sustained in the months ahead? And what is superfluous? Because like separating the wheat from the chaff, the next phase requires us to do some sorting. I do hope you'll join me for that. And of course, you'll find me on all social platforms at Flourishing Introverts. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.